In late afternoon light, Han and May stood at the edge of a rice paddy. The field stretched to a hill in the distance, where evening smoke curled from chimneys into the still air. They were nearly done with this harvest. The last few rose golden under their feet. Han bent over, picking up stalks and bundling them neatly. May reached for her bundle, then paused. She looked at Han's hands moving steadily through the rice, his posture straight as a reed in the wind. Without speaking, she dropped to one knee beside him, taking up a few stalks too. The air smelled of earth and ripe grain. A dragonfly landed on May's wrist, but flew off when she made no move. They worked side by side for a while without words. When they had gathered enough, Han tied the bundles with twine and placed them at his feet. May did the same, though her pile was smaller. "Will you be joining us?" Han asked as he straightened up. May nodded. "I'll come help in the kitchen." Han tilted his head towards the road. "Come see something," he said. They walked a short way to an old shrine half buried under creepers and vines. The door had long since fallen off, revealing an empty interior with a faint scent of dampness and incense left by passing travelers. May stepped inside, her bare feet brushing the dusty floorboards. Han waited outside, leaning against the wall. "Look," May said softly, holding out a small statue she'd found in a crevice behind the altar. It was worn smooth from years of touch, its face barely discernible under layers of grime. Han took it gently and wiped away some dust with his sleeve. "It's old," he remarked. "Maybe people used to come here when things were hard." "Yes." He handed her back the statue without comment, and they left the shrine behind, making their way towards home in silence. When they reached the farmhouse kitchen, Han set about slicing vegetables for supper while May helped chop firewood. The other farmers sat around a table eating, chatting as if nothing had changed since last week's meal. May saw her reflection in a bowl of water and smiled to herself. Perhaps that was all there was to knowing, simply seeing the small things around you. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, May stepped outside to look at the stars. The moon hung low, almost full, giving everything an ethereal glow. She remembered Han's hands in the paddy and how quiet he'd been when she joined him. A cricket chirped from somewhere nearby, its song soft yet insistent. She returned inside with a sigh and turned out the lamp by her bed. As she lay down, she caught sight of the old statue on the shelf beside her pillow. In the darkened room, it looked almost as if it were watching over her.
You're listening to the Empty Teahouse. The cricket's song grew faint as dawn approached, heralding the shift to another evening in the lantern-lit courtyard where snow whispered secrets beneath Takashi's stall.
Winter had settled into the countryside with its usual quietude. Each evening, as darkness deepened and the air grew frigid, a man named Takashi would wind his way back to the noodle stall he owned near the village center. This night was like any other, save for the figure waiting in his stall, a young woman whose presence felt like a whisper amidst the snow. She wore an old coat that barely reached her knees and held a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. As she approached, the lantern hanging above their heads cast long shadows across her face and shoulders. Takashi nodded to acknowledge her without speaking. He knew from experience this meant something needed saying, but neither of them was eager for words. The woman waited as he prepared the broth and noodles behind his counter, each movement deliberate yet swift. Once everything was set up, she slid into a seat, eyes fixed on her parcel. Takashi placed 2 steaming bowls before her, one for herself, one for him, and offered silence. He knew how it felt to be without words in the face of need. She lifted the lid from her bowl and stirred the soup carefully, her gaze never lifting from its surface. A small spoon clinked against the side as she ate slowly, savoring each bite as if tasting something rare and precious. When half the noodles were gone, she unwrapped her parcel to reveal a collection of dried mushrooms and some handmade tofu. Takashi looked at her inquiringly but said nothing. She handed him the bundle with another nod, not meeting his eyes this time. It was an offering that spoke volumes without words, thankfulness, perhaps regret. He accepted it quietly and tucked it away behind the counter before turning back to finish his own meal. The silence between them held no awkwardness, instead, it felt like a kind of understanding. When she had finished eating, she stood and thanked him with another nod. Before leaving, she paused at the door and turned one last time toward Takashi. In that moment, he saw something in her eyes, a reflection perhaps of his own face as he looked back, something unspoken and shared. With a final, slight bow, she slipped out into the night, footsteps muffled by fresh snow. The sound of the latch clicking shut echoed softly in the stall's stillness. Takashi returned to his kitchen area, leaving the lantern burning low for her warmth one last time as he began cleaning up. Outside, the winter sky was a deep wash of indigo, dotted with stars. Underneath this quiet canopy, she continued on toward home, lighter than when she had arrived but carrying something unseen in her heart.
The lantern flame swayed once, then steadied again, casting a warm glow onto the persimmon tree in an old and quiet courtyard, where Lee and May found a moment of peace amidst the cold night air.
In the quiet courtyard of an old inn, a single persimmon tree stood, its leaves just beginning to turn. Beneath it sat two people. Lee, a returning soldier who had left his uniform behind in the city, and May, the inn's midwife who was on her way home after tending to another birth. Lee had come back early morning, weary from the long journey but unable to sleep yet. The courtyard seemed an inviting place for solitude, though he knew no one would disturb him here. He sat by the tree, staring at its bare branches as if they held some secret of the world. May entered the courtyard shortly after Lee, her footsteps slow and careful on the stone paving. She had walked many miles since dawn, but fatigue had not touched her spirit. She saw Lee sitting there under the persimmon tree, and felt a pull to join him in his quietness. "May I sit with you?" she asked softly. Lee looked up, surprised by the sudden voice. "Of course," he said, gesturing to the space beside him. They sat in silence for what seemed like hours, but neither felt the need to speak. The courtyard was empty except for them and the tree. A gentle breeze stirred through its branches, causing a soft rustling sound that filled their ears with a sense of calm. Lee broke the silence first, his voice barely above a whisper. "I returned with nothing." May nodded understandingly. "Sometimes taking nothing is the greatest return," she replied. He glanced at her, curious. "How do you mean?" She smiled gently and looked up at the tree. "When I am done tending to births in the night, sometimes all that's left for me is a bowl of porridge before sleep. It doesn't fill my stomach as much as it fills my heart." Lee considered her words carefully, absorbing their quiet weight. They didn't speak again until the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the courtyard. "It feels like I've come full circle," Lee said finally, his gaze still fixed on the tree. May watched him for a moment before responding. "Every journey ends in return." They stood together then, stretching their legs after sitting so long. As May turned to leave, she reached into her satchel and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. With a smile, she handed it over to Lee. Inside was a single ripe persimmon. "Take this," she said simply. "It's not much, but maybe it will remind you of something important." Lee accepted the fruit with both hands, surprised by its warmth and weight in his palms. Without words, he took her hand briefly before letting go as she walked away from him, back towards the road. The courtyard returned to its quietude, broken only by the persistent rustling of leaves overhead. Lee stood there holding the persimmon, feeling its smooth skin under his fingers. He watched May disappear into the distance until all that was left were the sound of her footsteps fading away, and the steady fluttering of leaves above. In this moment, he found himself content to let go of what no longer held meaning, just as a leaf eventually lets go of the branch it clings to, only to float gently towards its next purpose.
The lantern flickered softly as night settled over the courtyard, giving way to late summer's dusk on a hillside terrace where wind cleared storm clouds and brought distant sea breezes.
On a hillside terrace after a late summer storm, the wind had cleared and the clouds were thinning. The air smelled of wet grass and distant sea breezes. In this setting stood two figures, a young woman with long hair tied back in a simple knot and an older man whose face was lined from years spent in the elements. They hadn't spoken for some time, but there was understanding between them. The terrace overlooked a garden where tomatoes and peppers ripened under newly washed leaves. The old man had been fixing the roof earlier, his tools scattered nearby, nails still hanging by thin strings of wire, and now he sat on an upturned bucket, staring off into the distance as if seeing something beyond what lay in front of him. The young woman moved quietly around the terrace, gathering loose branches and stray leaves. She hummed a tune that was barely there, a breathy, soft melody that didn't disturb the quiet of the place. When she finished her work, she joined the man on his bucket, but instead of sitting beside him, she took one step back. They were both silent for a while, each lost in their own thoughts as they looked out over the valley below. It was late afternoon now and the sun slanted low, casting long shadows across the land. The old man turned to her then, his eyes finding hers before he spoke. "Do you think we should plant something new next year?" She considered this for a moment, picking up an empty tin can lying nearby and turning it over in her hands. She nodded slowly, almost imperceptibly. The old man looked at her with a soft smile. "Perhaps," she said softly, "we could try some squash." The old man chuckled gently, nodding his head. There was no need for words beyond that. The understanding between them filled any gaps left unsaid. Then he stood up, brushing off his trousers and offering a hand to the young woman. She took it with a grateful smile and they walked together towards an outbuilding where tools were stored. The wind shifted slightly as they moved, bringing another change in smell, this time of earthy soil and seeds waiting for spring's warmth. In the dimming light, just before twilight settled fully upon them, they stopped by a small wooden fence that marked the boundary of their garden plot. Here, they paused without speaking, both looking back towards the house on the terrace now visible in the gathering dusk. The young woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a small packet wrapped carefully in cloth, seeds from this year's harvest. She untied it carefully, letting some fall into the open palm of the old man's hand. He closed his fingers around them for just a moment before he opened his hand again and let the seeds spill back into hers. They turned towards the house once more, side by side as they began their journey home together.
The seeds glistened faintly in her palm as they ascended the hill towards home, transitioning into the quiet of autumn rain that washed chestnut leaves clean on the hillside terrace.
Late autumn, and the hillside terrace lay quiet under a sky that seemed to hold its breath. Rain had washed away the dust from the leaves of chestnut trees, leaving their brown needles carpeted with water. The air was thin here above the village, cold as ice but clean. By the stone wall at the top stood a woman named Hannah, her hands clasped in front of her like she might pray if she still did such things. She held a small basket of eggs, gathered from her chickens early that morning, and now almost too heavy with the wet chill. Her face was etched deep but soft around the edges, as if years had smoothed it down. A man approached up the path, his steps slow despite the day's promise of clear skies after the rain. His name was Koji, a carpenter who built homes for the village. He wore old work clothes that hung loosely on him now. He'd aged since his wife's passing last year. He stopped at Hannah's side, not saying anything but watching as she stared out over the view. "Mind if I stay?" Koji asked, and when she turned her head to nod silently, he stepped closer. They stood together where rainwater pooled in shallow hollows, reflecting slivers of blue sky. "Do you remember," Hannah began, "how we used to watch the children play down there on market day? so full of noise and color. Koji nodded, but his eyes stayed fixed on the distant village, now quiet and still. Too many empty chairs around, he said, referring to recent deaths in the community. Hannah didn't speak for a long time after that. Instead, she reached out and handed Koji one egg from her basket. The transfer was delicate. It seemed too fragile to pass between hands without breaking. But it held together, just as they always had. "I don't need them all," she said quietly, though he knew she was mistaken. "They keep me busy." Koji took the egg and turned it in his palms, feeling its warmth seep through the coolness of rain. He looked back at her then, a small smile playing on his lips. "I've got too many tools," he admitted. "A house can't use them all." Silence fell over them once more, but this time there was nothing to fill it except for the soft sounds of wind whispering through leaves and the distant murmur of water trickling downhill. Hannah finally shifted her weight slightly from one foot to another. "Would you like to help?" she asked him. She meant with the eggs or perhaps something else, but either way, there was an offer in it, of company, maybe even companionship again. Koji's hand tightened around the egg. Then he released his grip and let it drop back into her basket. "Only if you ask," he replied softly, as though sharing a secret. There was no eagerness to it, but acceptance instead, a willingness to be there, quietly. The wind rustled through another round of leaves somewhere nearby, sending more fallen needles skittering across the damp earth. Hannah looked down at her eggs and then up at Koji again, that same soft smile touching her lips before she turned away. "Thank you," she said simply, as if giving something back in exchange for his silent presence. He nodded once more and moved to stand beside a weathered old oak tree nearby, where shadows gathered under its sprawling branches. And so they were left there together on the hillside, each content with their simple role that day. Her watching over her chicken's legacy, him guarding against an empty house, and in between, a shared quietness that held more than words ever could.
Somewhere below, a single leaf detached and floated down toward the village, its journey mirroring the passage through these stories, landscapes, and times. The kettle cools at the empty tea house. Until tomorrow.